In my breakdown, I mentioned the idea of a comic book spread, which is where it's two pages combined to make one giant page. So this is how I wanted to introduce the show because this is a big moment where we learn that the dog is dead, and this is the introduction for a lot of our characters. So in order to make it feel like a garden, I added the grass to give it a bit of depth, and then I also wanted to add the roses for the plants. And I always imagined this as being like right in front of our house. I'll admit, for the classroom, I always imagined it as kind of a generic classroom where Chris just sits on a squashabon, reads or talks to him, and I just put together, the generics of like the apple, the chalkboard, and with the photo that I got of the chalkboard, it came with the bell and chalk, so I just added in because I thought it helped. At the police station, there's two parts of it where there's Chris with the officer at a room, and then there's where he meets his father at the office. So I combined them together to make another spread. So with the interrogation room, I'll admit it's kind of boring because I didn't know what to do with it, but I think it works too. It sort of creates this feeling of isolation that is happening because we don't know who he is yet. We just know that he's a little different. Now, for the office, when he meets his dad, I wanted to do a little more, so I included things like a desk where like someone would sit and they could do some office work, and I wanted to put a little board there with like a missing poster, and I wanted to include like a little map of the city where they connected it so it looks like they're on a case for a missing person to keep it fun in the background. For this scene, when I read the script, I saw that there were two variations of this where it takes place with Chris and his father, and then there's one where it shows Chris in his room playing video games when he learns that his mother died. For the part where they talk about solving Wellington's murder, I imagine sort of a minimalist living room because in my head I imagine them sort of being like a low middle class family. So I just did a minimalist thing where it's like the basic photos of father and son in the couch. For Chris's room, I know he talks a lot about being an astronaut, so I thought it'd be fun if I had like a telescope and like a window with the stars on it and a poster of the planets, and it's an encyclopedia of planets on the poster. And I thought since he wanted to be an astronaut, I thought it'd be a fun little thing to include Neil Armstrong on there as like a poster. For the park, I just imagined a sort of generic kind of thing, the plants, the road, a sidewalk, some bushes, the sun, with some clouds, and that's just pretty much it. There's nothing special here. For the office, I decided to add a photo of the family because I thought that'd be an interesting parallel because she has her own family and, she's seeing like a family issue right now. And I included the apple because sometimes when I think of an apple, I think of school more than the doctor. That sounds dumb, but I think it's funny. And then there's the little aspects like the diploma and the clock. So for the park scene when Chris learns about the affair, I always imagine them sitting down at a park, and so I just created a generic looking little park, and to give it the setting some depth, I added some grass. Other than that, it's just a kind of generic park with some clouds, the sun, and some trees. For the beach scene, I always imagined the mom would always sit on a chair, like reading a book, when she goes into the monologue in front of Chris. And I always thought he would be playing with the sand bucket shovel, creating a sandcastle. And to make this scene pop a little more, I added the wind waves instead of the clouds because I thought it would be a different change of pace for anything involving the sky. For the school hall, I wanted to add a little more decoration. So I added in posters, and I also wanted to keep the green color going that I had with the other school settings, and I added little red bars so that it could stand out a little more and maybe give the school some more color. And I also wanted to add the windows with looking outside because I thought it would make the scene feel a little more alive also. For Swindon Town, I kind of want to create that by using apartment buildings and adding a fence with a sidewalk. And for the backyard, I included some grass and I added the sun and the clouds. Honestly, it was hard to recreate Swindon, so I tried to sort of do like the closest I could do to like a city town hybrid. For the train station, I had in mind the idea of like the ads and the sign telling Chris where to go. The problem is that I probably should have done that as more of a spread because I know there's that giant scene of him having all the voices saying all the things. And that's pretty much what I had in mind with this, though I should have made it a little more bigger. For the scene in the train when he is seen by the officer, I pretty much just made a quick little generic mock-up of a train because this is going to be a short scene, but I wanted to at least do a little things like I put the outline of like landmarks of London, so that would be a fun to look at, and just got a table with two seats. With the train platform, what I had in mind was the adding of the tunnel because I thought it'd be a cool thing to draw. And I did want to add a train going through it, but I couldn't find a good transparent clip art for that. And I included the sign going another direction because I thought that was a fun little thing to add. But I also added a bench because a lot of platforms do have those. And the red beams are actually supposed to be like support beams for the tunnel. The tube train is actually the first scene that I came up with when I had the comic spread idea where three little sets are put together to make this huge train where you have the seats with Christopher and the officer, the scene where he goes to the bathroom, and the luggage compartment that he puts himself into when he's having the dream. This was something that I just put together because I thought it'd be fun to play around and adding a new color, and I should have added a little more of like a metallic window around it, but I couldn't really do that. But I'm still pretty happy with this idea that I had of the spread. For the train coming into Williston Junction, I imagined the train sort of popping out through the set, and since with the clip there was no platform, I had to make my own and increase the train tracks for that. So that's why it looks a little bit weird when you look at it. But I also want to add the sun to just not make it look boring to look at because there's still a little bit more to the character of that. But other than that, this is the one that I don't like the most, and I wish I could improve more on. But I'm still pretty happy with it conveying the idea of what I want it to be at least. With outside of Judy's house, there was a little thing where I didn't know what it would look like because at first I had the idea of it being outside, but I didn't know how to properly do it, or I didn't know how to execute it as well as I had in mind. So I decided to redo that and instead just show like the front of the building with the windows, some potted plants to give it a little more character, and a little wooden door. In the script, when you see Judy's house, it specifically says her bedroom for a line, so I decided to bring the bedroom to life where I put in a bed, a lamp, and a nightstand, but I also wanted to include like pictures of them doing couple things because I thought that'd be an interesting little detail to sort of see how much of a life they've made without the significant people in their life that they left behind. There's not much to say about Chris's bedroom because by the time you see him in the bedroom, he just came. So I just decided to add the detail of a sleeping bag because he mentions that he does have a sleeping bag. So there's nothing special here. When it came to showing the kitchen in Judy's house, I pretty much just wanted to make a regular looking kitchen with a microwave, a fridge, and a cabinet. And I felt the room was a bit empty, so I put a window there to at least bring it more together in a cabin so I don't have so much empty space. So in the script, it said that London was at night, the streets. So I wanted to get the starry sky, and I added in a cool little silhouette of the city or of like a city. It was hard to find one because I already used the ones with all the iconic landmarks, and I didn't want to repeat that a little bit. But I also added the telephone booth because the scene looked a little bit empty, and I thought it'd be a little fun to add that. And I added a cobblestone sidewalk because I also thought that'd be a fun little detail to sort of see and add a little more besides of what we've seen with the stage. In Hampstead Heath, there is a park, so I decided to try to make it as good to sort of look like a park, but not make it exactly like the one that we had before. But I did want to add the grass so it adds a little more depth to the scene. But I also included like different trees, new plane, but I also added the same clouds and sun to, still give it that daytime look. And I even added the ice cream truck, but I took out part of it because it showed the a drawing of the person supposed to be the owner and it said ice cream on it, but she says ice lolly, and so I took it there out of there, but I still like the look. So in the assignment when it's at Ed's home, I pretty much interpreted that as being where Ed lives, and if I messed that up, I'm sorry. But this is how I sort of thought about how his apartment might look if he doesn't live in a house anymore. I think since to me he'd have a pretty low income job, he'd probably for like a small apartment where he has like instead of like a sofa, he'd have like one armchair, a table, but since he still cares about Chris, he'd still carry at least one photo from the house with him. This is just how I see it, so if I mess that up with it being Ed's house, then sorry about that. Here we are at the end with the exam room. Here I wanted to just leave everything kind of empty except for like windows to sort of at least still make it seem not so boring, because to me the more interesting part was kind of leaving everything alone, since in a way Chris is now really on his own doing this exam by himself. I know with the Shaban sort of coming in his mind helping him, but I still think it's interesting to sort of give off the feeling that this time he is really on his own, and that's how I sort of wanted to play it off.